Hey guys and girls, Boardnell back with you. On this video I'm going to be talking about the first episode of Amazon's I Know What You Did Last Summer. The episode is called It's Thursday, and I will be talking about spoilers just to warn you in case you haven't seen the episode. Not that there's too much to spoil. So this is of course the new 10-part series which is based on the young adult novel, originally graphic novel from, I think it was it the 70s or a bit after that, something like that. And then of course, maybe more famous to modern fans, you had the slasher movies from the late 90s, early 2000s. Now this seems to be going back to the kind of young adult sort of roots. Maybe a little bit more edgy. It's hard to really get a gauge on that from this first episode, but they've obviously kept the premise of the movie, and I'm assuming of that novel, and there's definitely some clear pointers to the movies. So just my general feelings on this. So like the first film, the film which I'm more familiar with than the novel, but like that you've got a bunch of teen characters. We actually start with this opening narration from this character called Lennon, who's the main character, and we start with her coming home after the summer. So we start sort of in the present, and we then work our way back to show what exactly happened. We get a voiceover, and it sort of then cuts to the previous year when Lennon is surprised with this image, basically, I know what you did last summer, printed on her mirror, in blood as it happens. And so that's a warning that obviously someone's still out there who knows about the events. So we then cut to this party, this graduation party, which her and her friends are going to, and most of the episode takes place at that party, and a lot of it is just setting up the characters and the drama. So Lennon has a twin sister called Alison, and there's this sort of heat between them because it's Alison has a crush on this boy Dylan, and she's really been nervous about making the first move and not sure how to approach it. So we see that Lennon's kind of the more confident, but also the more sort of partnering type, a bit more aggressive when it comes to boys. She takes drugs. She encourages Alison to take drugs. Alison doesn't really want to take drugs, and she's advising Alison to just go for Lennon. So then there's this thing later when it's at least hinted that Lennon has slept with Dylan in the past. That's sort of suggested in this scene when Alison actually gets up the courage to go and speak to Dylan. But they have this big falling out, and then we obviously meet some of the other friends. So Margot, who's the one whose mother is hosting the party, who's kind of the more sort of shadow, whatever sort of it type girl, or that's the idea. You've got a few other friends who we get introduced to, and obviously the episode builds to, in the film, them running someone over on the road. Now the twist in this one is then the person they run over accidentally isn't just a random stranger. It's actually I'm gonna get into the twist later, but it's Alison basically. So they and it's Lennon who's driving at the time, and so she accidentally backs into her sister and kills her. So we then get all this drama with the group debating exactly what to do, suggesting, because at one point one of the guys in the group wants to go to the police, and he says, hey, I'll take the blame, I'll say I was driving. But then he's sort of persuaded not to do that by Lennon, who's kind of saying, well, I think it's Lennon, it might actually be one of the other girls, but it's sort of she starts saying, well, we all get the blame, and obviously Lennon was driving, that sort of thing, then it'll cost all of us our future. So they have to make this decision, and you get back and forth. There's also this character who like drives by, who knows the group, and that's another callback to the movie, because there was a character like that in the movie. But just to sum up my overall feelings, I think it's solid. I think it's fine for a setup episode. The cast were pretty strong, I would say. I think they felt like quite natural, and I believed than they were who they were. There's a couple of nice lines of dialogue. There's also some quite sort of clunky lines, and a bit, I think at times like it's trying a bit too hard to be kind of edgy and in your face, and it tries for the humour a bit much. Now there is actually, I think the joke of the episode for me is this gag when one of them's like talking to the other and sort of talking about like playing that game, like, you know, fuck, marry, kill basically, and he says, you know, I hate that, I sort of, and it's never any fun. And she says, well, of course it's never any fun, because you never choose to kill anyone. And then he says, well, okay, Hitler then, I would kill Hitler, because there's no way I'm gonna like fuck or marry. And that's sort of, I thought was like the sharpest sort of joke in the episode. But I think there are moments where it's a bit too over the top, or tries a little bit too hard to be edgy and funny, and there's just a bit of clunky dialogue in a scene where Alison and Lennon are having a fight, where she just says like fuck a few times, and just says you tried to fuck everything, you know, that's your answer. And that line I thought was a bit on the nose and a bit clunky, but I think it's a solid episode as an introduction. Like, obviously where it's leading is, and it's going to be like a whodunit style, and it feels like they've really sort of modernized it. I mean, a review I read sort of said that it was kind of like a Gossip Girl, but with like a murder mystery type thing, and that's probably a good way to describe it. Now, I did like the opening. I like the opening voiceover with Lennon when she's kind of talking about, you know, like, I'm not saying we didn't do fucked up stuff, but I mean, who doesn't? And it's not like we're going to sit around sort of questioning what we did, that kind of thing. And I sort of enjoyed that opening monologue. Like, it's a good introduction to her, a good introduction to her world, and sort of has this cynical sort of modern air to it. But at the same time, I think there was just something quite logical and sort of like grounded to what she was saying, whether you agree with it or not. But I think this is what this episode does, is it sort of gets a decent grasp on the characters, and it does feel quite grounded, like they're quite realistic sort of characters. And I also appreciated that they didn't go too OTT with like making them a bit too bitchy, or just a bit too like over the top in one way or the other. So like Margot, who's I think meant to be like the more shallow of the group, she didn't seem like totally unbearable. Like, they didn't go too far with that, so I appreciated that. As I said, I think the cast are pretty good, and you know, I mean, it's nothing amazing or anything to write home about, but I think for a first episode, as an episode which is like mostly setting up the characters and just like the premise of, you know, who did this exactly, then it's fine. It's solid. I can't really comment much further until I've seen episode 2, where we're obviously going to get more into the mystery, a bit more into the characters. And the other thing I need to talk about is the twist at the end, because the twist is then it was actually Lennon who got knocked over and killed, run over. It wasn't Alison. And so they start to show these, like, after the incident has happened and the sort of group are like debating what to do, it intercuts between that and like these flashbacks to the party and the bathroom like debate between Alison and Lennon. And I mean, for a while I wondered, well, why are they showing this really? I mean, is this really that important? But you actually find out later why it is important, because I was thinking for a while then, if it is like Alison who's been killed, then dramatically I'm not sure that made a lot of sense. But I think when it's revealed it's Lennon, that actually does make a lot more sense drama wise, just because it's this idea that like Alison was like pissed at her and feels that she's always stealing things from her, and this, so it just, for the drama of like who done it, I mean, could she potentially have done it on purpose? Then, which is unlikely, but just for the sake of that, I think it actually makes sense, and it's quite a nice reveal and twist at the end, because what happens is then Alison, leaves the party in a huff, and she actually goes in the car and is about to drive off, and at the same time the rest of the group have come out of the party, because like the police have sort of shown up and they're taking drugs, so Margot's like desperate to get out of there, so they just jump in the car, and they look identical, and they just assume it's Lennon who's in the driver's seat. And I think that's just a comment on like Lennon's a bit more attached to the group, a bit more of the popular one, and Alison just fades into the background. So I think it's sort of a nice turn both ways, from the sense then, because when you see like, well, Lennon / Alison arrive at the party, I sort of naturally thought it was Lennon, just because that's who we see in the first scene, but it's actually Alison, and then they sort of pull that off, sort of pull a twist off like later on, because it's actually Alison driving the car, so she knocks over Lennon, and you see they make the decision to bury her like at the caves, which again is a callback to the movie, to the first movie, and she actually takes back her necklace, which they had a fight over it in the bathroom. So it's a pretty nice twist. It's quite intriguing, because obviously Alison is, I guess, at least for the time being, gonna continue living this lie, and actually, obviously, the opening scene when she comes home, her father thinks that it's Lennon. So all this time they've believed that Alison is the one who was killed that night. So it's not like, I'm not saying it's like a completely original twist, but it was quite well done, I thought. So there you have it. That's my thoughts on the first episode of I Know What You Did Last Summer. There's 10 episodes, and they're all up on. Sorry, they're not all up on Amazon. There's 4 up, so they're putting 4 out this week. And after that, it's going to be 1 episode per week. So if you've seen it, let me know your thoughts in the comments below. Please like and subscribe. You can also share me out on social media. And I'll be back soon with a review of episode 2. I'm going to stick with it for the time being. But yeah, let me know what you thought of this first episode, and look out for more TV and movie reviews, especially horror movie and TV reviews this month. Take care, guys. See you later.